Slide, please. Dr. Nitin Patankar, pioneer bariatric physician, well-known, renowned, seen in all obesity conferences. Can we have? Yes. He's an MD in medicine, professional counselor certification from Mumbai University, Scope certified bariatric physician, president of Association of Physicians of India at Thane. He has multiple papers published, including pioneering reversal of lifestyle disease program in India, consultant to various pharma companies. He conducts multiple programs, TV shows, and multiple social activities for awareness of obesity and in training. And he is there as a part of our obesity training program anytime we conduct. So may I invite Dr. Nitin Patankar to share his slides and speak on lifestyle modification, diet, and exercise to manage obesity.
Yeah, I think somebody from Sinsan can share the slides. I have sent the slides, I think.
Yeah, we'll coordinate, sir. We'll coordinate, sir.
Yeah.
Just a minute.
So at the outset, let me thank Sinsan Pharma, especially Mr. Mahesh Dabir, and my very close friend, Dr. Shashank Shah, who has been a pioneer in bariatric surgery and basically giving authenticity to these surgical procedures. And he has represented India into various national and international forums and given credibility to obesity management as a stream in the international world. So thank you, Shashank, for calling me for this session. And when I saw this idea of a seminar or a webinar on setting up of obesity clinic, I was very happy because this is really going one step forward, or what we can say a next level of webinar. Next slide. So we know that obesity and obesity management are as old as, I think, human history. We know that obesity is mentioned in some Mayan cultures and those Venus statues and all those things. But till today, we were always like searching how to treat obesity. So it all initially started with the assumption that if you eat more, you will put on more weight. If you work out less, you will put on more weight. So diet and exercise were the initial treatments, and till today, they form the basis of obesity management. But as the science advanced, we started realizing that obesity is not merely eating and a balance between eating and workouts. So then evolved a medical treatment of obesity, but it started and it still continues having a lot of hiccups because of the perception by people that obesity is a disease of laziness or disease of gluttony, and that's why even minor side effects which are associated with many other things are not accepted in obesity management. And that's why it is medical treatment. Any medicine, the lifespan of any medicine is very short. Then came the novel idea of surgically treating obesity, and I remember initially it started with gastric bands, then it evolved into multiple procedures, and then we have sleeve gastrectomy, then mini gastric bypass, and then the transposition of the intestinal segments for even diabetes management. But today we are looking at something beyond all these things, and that's what is expected from an obesity clinic. Next slide. Next slide, please. So Albert Einstein had said that learn from yesterday, live for today, hope for tomorrow, but the important thing is not to stop questioning. So we always have to ask questions to ourselves whether whatever we are doing is enough and is right. So let's go to next slide. So what we have learned from the past. So we know that the exercise, as it is said that for diabetes management, obesity management, or all lifestyle disorders, exercise is important. Exercise is good for maintenance, but exercise doesn't cause weight loss. So I always imagine exercise, or somebody who prescribes exercise or is an exercise consultant, is like a payment by hour, or it's like you are doing exercises till that time, you get your payment or benefits. The moment you stop doing it, it is lost. And it is always said that the exercise benefits or the exercise related increase in metabolic rate, that 10% increase that we can get, takes 6 weeks to start and 1 week to lose that. Then comes the diet, which is like, as the first speaker said, that it is, we are living in a obesogenic environment, and that is mainly contributed by the food availability and variety. So diet, it's like a temporary job, may last for a month. And we know that the science of food or science of nutrition is having a losing battle with food technology and food marketing. Third comes the medicine. It may be like a society chairman's post. The next year, you know that you have to, you automatically go out and somebody else takes over. So medicine is like a society chairman's post, and surgery is truly like a politician. It's like winning an election, but still it lasts for 5 years and then the new election comes. So we have learned from the past that whatever way we treat obesity, it is still short or shorter lasting. Next slide. So what are the institutions we have for obesity management presently? So we have gymnasiums, we have playgrounds, we have sports complexes, diet and nutrition clinics, doctors' clinics, bariatric surgery centers, spas and retreats. But you will look at it, everything ends with attaining the weight loss. The main problem is not attaining weight loss. Next slide. So why we need obesity clinic as a separate entity? Because diet, exercise, medicine and surgery alone or in combination definitely achieve weight loss goals for a shorter or longer duration. Surgery gives the longest weight loss maintenance and exercise the shortest, but none can achieve a long lasting weight loss. To maintain the results, we need to change in lifestyle, and lifestyle means the habits that we form. Next slide. So what is the mission of obesity clinic? The first, of course, is attain weight loss goal. So for which the teamwork is required. Every patient may respond to something different, and we cannot just infinitely say that you can keep on trying diet or keep on trying medicines and you will get weight loss one day in future, because by that time all the systems will be in jeopardy. So we have to take a, what we can say, a controlled risk, give medicines, make the patient ready for surgery and attain a weight loss goal. But the main mission for obesity clinic is shift from goals to habits that will maintain the weight loss, because that is the crux of it. Next slide. So why goals are not sufficient, or why we don't go for any goal? We have to focus on habits and not on goals, because weight regainers and weight maintainers have the same goals. Weight regain is perceived as a failure, and failure leads to either rationalization or avoidance of the therapy. And so there will be a large period when patient will regain weight and again like cause disturbance in all other systems. And when it reaches its peak or can't be, say, taken forward further, then he will start again the primary process of going again for a diet, exercise or something. And even for surgery, that we have seen that sometimes if they don't follow the lifestyle managements, then even they need to go revision procedures or they need to do something. So we don't want to a patient to go into that avoidance response or a rationalization. Next slide. So goal focus and habit focus. If weight loss is seen as a goal, attaining a goal is like attaining a summit. You go to Kanchenjunga, you go to Mount Everest, or reaching the like train terminus or any terminus. The natural tendency or natural way is to begin the return journey. And that's what happens when we are focusing on goals. Next slide. So to prevent this tendency to start a return journey, weight loss intervention should begin with identifying the present habits that has led to the weight. Now, these habits I would like to explore a little. Dr. Shah said that genetics is a predominant thing, but as we know, most of the genes that cause obesity, apart from identical twins, they are called as permissible genes. What do you mean by permissible genes? That if your habits are obesogenic, the genes will permit it. If the habits are not obesogenic, you won't get it. So identifying the present habits that led to obesity is the first primary target. Then identifying the new habits and understanding the obstacles in changing the habits. Because many times, this is where the prayer of Alcoholics Anonymous can be applied, that we have to first understand what we can change, understand what we cannot change, and then pursue the things that we can change diligently. Next slide. So we have to also look that if we want to change a habit, we have to develop some competence in tune with the resources that we have. And the resources can be a time resource, people, money, knowledge, materials, and environment. All these resources may not be like a variance or a changeable things. Like for a person who is so busy like Dr. Shashank Shah, the time, that is, if he asks to do the intermittent fasting, or if he asks to give that 2 times a meal or a fixed time meals or a zone diet, it may not work for him. So you have to look at what are the available variables and then zero in on that and keep on working towards it to changing the habits. Next slide. So weight loss should become a tool to attain a bigger life goals. Even WHO has said that everybody knows how to be healthy, but health cannot become a life goal. Because unless you have a very big goal or a very extended goal where you can use human life to attain that something bigger than yourself, then the health can become a tool and such people remain very healthy. Because health can be a tool for your life goals. Similarly, weight loss should become a tool to attain a bigger life goal. Now I can give you a small example of this. In Thane, where I practice, there was a doctor who was around 95 kg, and he knew everything about weight loss. And 4 years, we always had interactions. He used to lose around 10, 12 kg weight, and then he used to regain it. And he used to give a lot of reasons. And I know that chartered accountants, doctors, or very intelligent people are very bad patients, because they can give you such a logic that you feel that the logic is truth, and that's why the becoming obese or not maintaining weight is like a non-negotiable thing for these people. Then he was advised bariatric surgery, but he was scared because he was a doctor. He was scared of undergoing a knife. He himself is a, what you can say, oncosurgeon, but he didn't want to undergo a knife. So then we discussed about these bigger goals in life. The bigger goals may not be like very philanthropic or something. So he went to Australia once, and there he wanted to do bungee jumping. And because of his weight, he was rejected. And he was so charged up looking at that bungee jumping. He came back and he said that by hook or crook, I want to lose weight and go back and do the bungee jumping. Once that happened, he lost his 22 kg weight. He came to around 74 kg, then went back to the same place in Australia and did that bungee jumping. The excitement was so profound that now every 2 years, he goes for some adventure activity. So to keep on doing the adventure activities and exposing his children to such like secured but risky things to develop their personality, now he automatically maintains his weight because he knows that if he want to pursue this hobby, this habit, then he has to maintain weight. So weight loss becomes a tool for attaining happiness. So there are a number of examples like this. So for a obesity clinic, the discussion on what the person wants to do with that lower weight is the $1 million question, because attaining weight loss and then abstract things like gaining health or wearing good clothes has got no meaning. So we have to first find out what you can do or how will you enjoy your lower weight. That is the most important question. Next slide. So I always find it fascinating that whatever the life choices or whatever is related to lifestyle, yoga plays a big role or has already given you answers for that. It is said that yoga should become your lifestyle, but yoga can be used to develop good lifestyles. So in yoga, there is a concept called as our body is made up of 5 layers. The outermost that we see is called as Annamaya. The inner one is called as Pranamaya. Inner to that is Manomaya, then Jnanamaya, and the last is Anandamaya, that is called as a Kosh, Anandamaya Kosh. And if you look at modern literature about habit change and everything, it says that you don't have to focus on outcomes. You have to focus on processes. You have to focus on systems so that you can have change in your identity to your desired level. So I have these pictures always in my lectures that your Annamaya and Pranamaya Kosh, whatever we do, whether we use medicines, diet, exercise, liposuction, tummy tuck, or bariatric surgery, it is basically the outcomes in Annamaya and Pranamaya Kosh that we are engaged in. But what we need to do is a process change. So we have to understand, and it has to be inculcated into your subconscious mind and Manomaya Kosh. To what end? Because it should go to change my identity. I should become a happy person with a certain weight or a lower weight, for which these processes should keep on giving me happiness. So happiness need not be achieved from outside. By just following these habits, if I feel happy, the outcomes are evident. Next slide. So this is copied from a very famous book called as Atomic Habits. So this is a very important thing, that how the habits are formed or broken. So there is always, we start with the second thing, that is cravings or desires. That whatever present state I am in, if I am happy in the present state, I won't think of changing it. If I don't know that there is something more happier is available, I won't think of changing. But the marketing, there's so many things that are bombarded on us that I start feeling that from a present stage or state of mind, state of my body, I can attain a happier state. That is called as a craving, or that is called as a desire to change. Now, once that desire to change is there, again, all the information that we receive, our culture, our inputs from our childhood, they are looking for what are the cues which can satisfy my desire. So once I see the cue, then that desire is satisfied, and to satisfy the desire, I behave in certain fashion. Now let us take a small example, that I want to lose weight, but that losing weight, I know that it's a very long-term thing, but I also like a samosa. So if I eat a samosa, I feel that it will make me happy. If that is my desire and I have never had a chance to dispute that desire inside me, then whenever somebody eats a samosa or I smell a samosa, I go in front of the, say, a thela, I feel that presently, today, now, I can have some pleasure, and then tomorrow I will compensate it by doing more diets or anything, and my behavioral response is going, buying a samosa, eating it, and again, once I eat it, it gives me a reward. Reward is I feel happy, I feel satisfied, and if I feel satisfied, then this behavior is reinforced. So next time, my resistance to not to eat this, not to do something goes out. So this is a habit loop that we form, and there are like enormous number of things that are happening. We are generating those desires, and see basically what is advertisement. The marketeers, the sellers, they give you a lot of cues and they imagine what desires you can have. Even they present it in such a fashion that your desires are stimulated, then the cues are given, then you are forced to behave in a certain fashion, you respond, and then it will lead to reward. Unfortunately, food technology or in general technology has now manipulated all these factors of a habit loop, starting from cravings to response to reward and cue. If anybody is interested, can go and read something about bliss point of food. Next slide. So what we can do? So the first thing that they say is start thinking, start disputing. It is called the introspection. So what is attractive and what is unattractive? So if you want to change a habit, the desire should be made, the desire or unhealthy desire can be made unattractive. So we had done one experiment when I was in Johns Hopkins, that we have there was a residential program and people were staying there and they had coupons and they can buy anything. And we made a documentary where people from slums, people who have got a lot of, say, bandages and really dirty and oozing people were eating pizza. And the same pizza is available in the cafeteria. The moment we started showing this film, the buying or the eating of that pizza went down drastically, because what we achieved was making that eating pizza and getting pleasure from eating that pizza very unattractive. Similarly, what we can do about the cues, that people say that you make it invisible. So if you feel like opening a fridge and eating ice cream, don't keep the ice cream there. But again, these may not be practical things. So the most important thing is how to make it unattractive, or alternatively, there should be something more attractive and which is very healthy. So this is called as a transference. So that is what is required. Then the behavior should be made more difficult. I have seen this many times. Suppose you are a smoker and you adopt a behavior that you will always go and buy a cigarette instead of keeping a cigarette packet with you. Then if you get an urge, you will feel 10 times. And unless the urge is very strong, you may not walk up to the cigarette shop and buy a cigarette. But for which you have to have that small discipline that I will go there and buy one cigarette at a time. This will make it more difficult and it can trigger the change. And similarly, the rewards that we get. So this is a question that is not answered by our psychology, that what is satisfying and what is unsatisfying. That so much depends on how much we are bombarded with. Because I remember one case, because in Jupiter Hospital, we get a lot of patients from Kenya. So there was one girl who came there who was black, but not jet black. And her mother was saying she has got image problems. So I was asking her, what is the image problem? So she said that she is looking a little fair compared to her peers. And in our country, the jet black color or absolutely dark black color is considered beauty. So she is doing something to blacken the skin. And we see here fairness creams. So what will be satisfying or unsatisfying to you depends on, again, environment and learning. So this is all, it's like a, what you can say, a loop or a maze. So let's see next slide. So I have always found that to tackle this problem, again, yoga is the best way of changing habits. So now I am just going to put it in 2 minutes because this is a complete workshops that we take on this. These are called as the chakra system. That root chakra is basically makes you think secure, stable, and the beauty of the chakra system is there is something called the pratyahar and dhyan, that you start thinking something and it can happen. So if I feel that by eating salads, I know, but I may not enjoy it. But once I start, say, meditating on root chakra, I feel very secure by eating a salad. So the chakra has got different, say, feelings and different things that happen inside us. So for root chakra, it is grounding. Then sacral chakra, it is feeling. So because feelings are most important, how I feel. When I touch something, how I feel. So then solar chakra is basically asking something. It makes you ask the question, because many times we know, but at the last moment there's a paralysis to ask question. If somebody comes and tells you, "Aaj ye khana hi padega," then I don't ask that question. Ki kyun khana padega? I don't want to eat it. Then heart is to accept, heart chakra, because many times we know the good things, but our heart is not ready to accept it. So meditation, which is called as a dedicated meditation or a guided meditation, and it's not just making you sleep, but all these things can be discussed and then meditated. It is called the intentional meditation. Then throat chakra will give you very clear idea and to communicate with others that what you really want. And then crown chakra is about knowing. So the moment you start working with these chakras, the habit change becomes much easier, because we know that cognitive therapy and behavioral therapy, they are really useful, but internalization of habits, that's where we lack things. And that's where the yoga has already done 2000 years back. It has done a wonderful job. If you look at the situations around us in today's world, we see so much black marketing of remdesivir and so many things are happening, and we feel why the person is doing like this. So basically the morals, values, they come from our sacral chakra and solar chakra. And if we start working on these, the children who are growing, they will have a different value system. So that's where the yoga pitches in. And that's why the yoga has remained for 2000 years. And it is an amazing thing that how every walk of life, this becomes very useful. Next slide. So I end here. Again, I thanks Instant Pharma and Dr. Shashank Shah for giving me this opportunity to talk on something which is very different. And I'm very happy that the opening of obesity clinic or setting up of obesity clinic, Mr. Dabir is thinking at next level of what we require in obesity management. Thank you so much.